Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. This is actually a Dungeon Master roundtable made up of a whole lot of YouTube creators, and I have a bunch of people who are going to help me work through some questions. So if you'd like to introduce yourself.
How's it going? No Fun Allowed here, and I'm all about tabletop role-playing games, about running modules, and figuring out how to run all these fantastic systems.
Hey there, I'm Ryan with Roll for Initiative and play lots of different games. I love to run them. I really enjoy running convention games as well as my home tabletop games.
I am DM Scotty. People call me the craft father. I started using junk to make it in my D&D games and have terrain and that kind of thing. So here we are, the DM's craft, DM Scotty.
How do you design your Dungeons and Dragons or RPG rooms? So the actual room itself, not so much a dungeon or a big broad location, but just like a specific room. How do you go about doing that, and why do you do it that way? What about you, No Fun?
I like to start from the very beginning of what was its original purpose. So if this is like, let's say, a ruined castle, and what is this room? What was it originally intended to be? Was this the armory? Was this a bedroom? Was this whatever? And then I slowly go through the history of it. Okay, it was created with this purpose, but what is it now? Is it now the den of the monster? Is it now a trap room? Is it literally just an empty space to keep my people or my players sweating? I like to go through those steps and then eventually get to then thinking, what are my players going to think when they walk through here? Are they going to be able to pick up any and all of that information? Or am I just creating an elaborate story in my head that's canon, but the players are never going to figure any of it out? So I like to go through each of those steps and then figure out, what was its original purpose? What is it now? What are my players going to pick up from it? And is it going to actually influence the story at all whatsoever?
For me, the rooms, and it doesn't matter what building it's in, or honestly, for me, what system it is that you're running or you're playing. I want my room to feel lived in. Right. So it's important to me that, there are details that I like to sprinkle in. And sometimes it's a throwaway detail just to let the players know that this really is someone's room, and that can be something as simple as, let's say that it's it's just a 4 or 5 room cabin that a bunch of the bandits were hanging out in, but letting them know, as they go into one of these rooms where all of the beds were, it's saying like, yeah, there's this large bed clearly belonged to the Minotaur that you guys just felled. It's the only bed big enough for him, and there's a half finished wood carving of an elk that's done really well. There's a book that's a well-worn book that's on the nightstand. You can see, just sort of stuck with a nail on the wall, there's like a crayon drawing that some little child of some kind, and it's the Minotaur, and there's a house, and there's some birdies and all of that kind of, like, those are things that all of a sudden I don't have to come up with 20 minutes of canonical lore about who that Minotaur was. But now my players are sitting there and they're like, we're really glad that we didn't kill that Minotaur. We just chased them away, because clearly that Minotaur, who is quite the skilled artist and has a little girl at home and is bettering himself by trying to go through and read that book, glad we didn't murder him just because he's the quote unquote bad guy. So like, I like to throw those kinds of things in there. 2 or 3 little details in every other room. I have found it just becomes, you can come up with them off the top of your head. Maybe some people really will need to have to start planning that out ahead of time if they want to try to start doing it. But it gets pretty quick and pretty easy to do that. And it's fun, the stories that you come up with and that your players come up with. And it makes the rooms feel more real, excuse me. Not just, oh, this is the barracks. Oh, this is the armory. Oh, this is the wizard's lair. Ah, this one we should search. Right. And then second for me, if it's a room that's part of a larger complex in a dungeon or a keep or a starship or whatever. Next, after coming up with those ideas, it's what is the purpose of this room in the structure of the building? And I don't mean like, oh, it used to be the armory. I mean, like, for me, this is going to be a choke point for their retreat because they're going to get ambushed towards the end of this. This is going to be a place where they can actually have a short rest that's going to be undisturbed if they figure out that they can lock the door from the inside. What are some story beat moments that this room can serve as later? This is going to make a great ambush point that they're going to have to watch out for if they come back to this in 3 or 4 sessions. I like to kind of keep those things in mind as far as how do I want to use them as the DM, as opposed to like what was the original architect's plan for the thing. So yeah, personalization and, you know, telling those stories, and then also how can I use this for the advantage or to really, really go after my players and make this kind of a nightmare room for them, even though it's the ballroom. And if there's a chandelier, I mean, clearly that's going to be swung upon or chopped and dropped on somebody.
You know, as the god of the world or the creator or whatever, sometimes the most terrifying thing can be like if you just drawn a blank in your mind, right? Like what, okay, I need a game for tomorrow night. What can I do? Right. And you're just drawing a blank. Okay. I don't know what to do. One thing I found that can really help you, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, the 5-room dungeons. It's a philosophy for making dungeons. It's not necessarily rooms that a dungeon with 5 rooms, but it's 5 different types rooms, like a trapped room, a combat room, a plot revelation room, and that kind of thing. That can help. That can, you know, having something like that to start as kind of a framework can help you to develop rooms. Beyond that, really how I think of rooms is like the furtherance of the story. Like how can I further because to me, story is king. I'm the kind of DM that like doesn't give you necessarily all the information when you go in, because that kind of info dump, your players, you know, their eyes glaze over and cross, and then they don't remember anything you said. So when they go in the room, give them the most basic information of the room, right? And then let them ask you the questions like, oh, what do I see here? You know, what's in here? What's this? You know, and as they move around the room, say, so-and-so sees this, or so-and-so sees that, or you notice this that you didn't notice before. And that will keep the players. So when I design rooms, I like to keep that in mind, that when players move around the environment or ask me questions, then I can extrapolate on things. Also, it encourages players to ask you questions you may not have thought of, right? So say somebody asks you a question and you're like, oh, that's a great addition to the story. And you could just instantly add that to the story. You know, so they ask you, is there anything personal in the room? And you say, maybe you hadn't thought of that. And you say, oh yeah, you know, there's a statuette here. And they say, oh, I want to look at it. You know, they go look at it and maybe it has some writing on it. Or there's something under the statue, you know, that they find, maybe a key or something. You know, you can use their questions to actually build those minute details in a room that you may not have thought of, because you don't want to, like's been said, you don't want to give too much, you don't want to give too much information about stuff, because then you'll lose people. But if you dole it out, then it keeps everybody's attention. So what I like to do is I like to kind of think of points in the room where stuff is going to be revealed. Also, you want to think about like what everybody said, like how the room was used, what the room was before, and what maybe it's become. Anything interesting that is in the room or has changed the room, or what it was, or how it is now. You want to convey to your players. So you want to think about, to me, it's like a stage play. It's like, when do you want to reveal this information? Like, how do you want to reveal this information? When do you want to reveal this information? when I design rooms. It's like the drama of the room. How can I unfold the drama of the room to make it interesting? And say, say they're exploring the room and they're discovering stuff, and then one of the players is close to a door, and you say, "Oh, you notice the door creak. What do you want to do?" And then like someone looks over, and they see a figure run away. And so you've got them, you're leading them out of the room, you're getting them excited to go to the next part. It could be dangerous, what is that, or excited, instead of like, okay, here's another room, let's go in this room, let's go in this room. Another thing I don't really do much is I don't have like a ton of empty rooms. To me, that's just kind of, it may make sense, that there's a big building with a bunch of empty rooms, but just hand wave that stuff. Just say, oh, you go through this big area and there's a lot of empty cloisters. You find some broken beds, old books, candles, spiders, whatever. And if there's nothing interesting there, like, don't make them go to each room. Don't make them go to each room and discover it. That's not my style of play. My style of play is story. So I just hand wave all that. But yeah, that's what I like to do. I like to think about, so the main takeaway is I like to think about literally how I'm going to present the room in a dramatic way, even a mundane room.
So you pick up the statue. It says Faerun's greatest boss.
Yeah. Like, oh, we should have killed that guy.
I find that kind of interesting because your point on you don't include a lot of empty rooms, because traditionally a lot of pre-made adventures often did have, if you were exploring a dungeon, there were a lot of empty rooms.
Yes, they do.
And they used to often chew up a lot of time as players would go through the search macro and try to figure out if there was anything significant, secret doors, anything hidden, traps. They're always like, oh, room empty, there's something going on here, must be a trap. Really famous maneuver is empty room, and there's a copper coin lying on the ground with a light shining on it, only for them to find that it has no significance. It's just a copper coin with a light shining on it, and it takes an hour for them to figure out how to get through that. I struggle with room design. I actually find that hard, but Trevor, no fun allowed. I certainly do think about the room's function, its purpose, those sorts of things. I try to get a sense of the architecture, decorations, furniture, inhabitants. I do think about those sorts of things, but I kind of cheat with a lot of stuff. I use story cubes to make stuff up on the fly. So when you were talking about that, Scotty, creating for something that you would incorporate as they go, as they're searching, story cubes are often something I would roll and like, what did they find? I've rolled a fish. You find a statue of a fish, and then it becomes something. Or I used to put a lot of trinkets into my rooms just to mess with my players because they would think they were magical, when of course they weren't. But the Dungeon Master Guide, in the back, there's those charts or tables on the different rooms types. It's not as expansive as I would like, but it does have a lot of different things you can place in there if you're kind of lost. So if I get lost and I'm just like, I don't know what to do, I'll use that. And I also cheat by using Google. I'll search for real architecture and locations and build rooms around that.
I sort of notoriously, and Dawn laughs whenever I do it, because if I'm building like a manor or something like that for a game, man, I will fire up Sims 4 and I'll build the manor in the game and mess around with it, and where are the rooms and what is this, and I'll lose 2 days of messing around for this thing that is going to take 2 hours maybe.
Now that we've heard from everybody, I would like you to tell me how you go about designing rooms in your games. Doesn't matter what sort of game it is, and why you do it that way. So this has been our discussion, roundtable discussion. Hopefully it's been useful to you, which I think it will be. And if you want to go and check out some of these really interesting and useful and helpful individuals who are doing lots of really good content on YouTube, you can check them out at the following places. So where can they find you, No Fun?
Yeah, how's it going? No Fun Allowed. You can find me on YouTube, Twitter, and that's pretty much all I'm active on. I'm just pumping out videos all the time, and if you comment, I'm probably going to answer.
Ryan, what about you? Where can they find you?
You can find me at Roll4 Initiative, roll the number 4 Initiative, and that's on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, come and find us and our videos and all that kind of stuff. We'd love to see you.
Scotty, where can they find you?
You guys can find me on YouTube, the DM's Craft, where I make cheap junk into terrain for my D&D game. You can find me on Facebook, the Tabletop Crafters Guild, and you can also find me at Quest Givers, where we have a site where we have modules that I've written and done terrain pictures for and that kind of thing. We also just released our campaign book called The North Road, which is a successful Kickstarter, and we've got it up there for sale now. Over 400 pages of content, a whole campaign. So yeah, check it out, Quest Givers. And I also have a channel too.
Thank you, all of you. It's been really, really helpful. I'm so glad you came, and I am looking forward to hopefully continuing our discussions in the future. So for all of you, thank you for tuning in, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.